it's built in a factory and it can just be transported down to site, and there's less time on site, there's more time for you to develop your strategies, etc., etc. So that's one of the positives of it. In reality, that doesn't always happen, unfortunately. So I think there's still a bit of work the modular contractor, modular industry itself needs to do on that. When we try something different, we learn new things, we grow, we elevate, and I think that's what we're trying to do as a council, and I think that's what we're proving that can be done as a council. Basically seeing people who don't have a home move into their homes, so you're seeing their faces. Often, when you come into the office, you see young families that have turned up that have basically got nowhere to live, and it's heartbreaking. That's the reason why you get into public sector housing.
Hello, I'm Toby Fox from 1.5 Million New Homes, the local government challenge sponsored by Redloft and by Lovell Partnerships. And I'm visiting a different council every month to find out what works and what needs to change to get more homes built. And this month, on the coldest day of the year by far, I've got a very warm welcome from the Royal Borough of Greenwich, where I'm going to meet Peter Fernandes, who's working on a scheme called Orangery Lane, which employs MMC, modern methods of construction, to deliver new homes all across the borough under a programme called Greenwich Builds.
My name is Peter Fernandes. I work for Royal Borough of Greenwich. We are standing outside one of our flagship schemes called Orangery Lane. This was developed as part of the council's initial exploration of MMC, and this is all modular. It's 40 units, and it's all affordable housing, and it's a mixture of 1 to 4 bedrooms. That's the scheme.
And when did you start, and how long has it taken to put
together?
So
we've had quite a few challenges on this scheme, primarily because when we initially started, it was just before COVID hit. So we had a lot of supply chain failure issues. Because it was modular, a couple of modular companies unfortunately went into administration, and we had to overcome those challenges. We've re-enlisted and gone to another modular contractor who's now helping us complete the scheme as it is.
And when another modular contractor takes over, you don't have to kind of respec the whole scheme and knock it down and start again from scratch? Are they delivering the same thing?
Thankfully, yes. We don't have to go back. As long as we've got the planning permission, there's some minor tweaks in terms of the external structure and the fabric we need to make because of the new modular provider. But aside from that, it's as we've achieved planning approval for.
And there's something interesting there, isn't there? Because people often rail against the MMC sector because they say they're all going bust. Loads of modular contractors have gone bust, and they leave you in the lurch because you can't get someone else who can deliver exactly the same system. So you sort of have to start again. But of course, traditional contractors have also been biting the dust in horrific numbers over the last few years. So where do you see the sort of usefulness of MMC and the risks involved in working with them? That was a very long question.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I think the usefulness is we're all sold, it's built in a factory and it can just be transported down to site, and there's less time on site, there's more time for you to develop your strategies, etc., etc. So that's one of the positives of it. In reality, that doesn't always happen, unfortunately. So I think there's still a bit of work the modular contractor, modular industry itself needs to do on that. And then on the other side of that, I think we as enablers, if you like, not only local authorities but private sector as well, also need to look at how we can help the modular providers develop and fit in more cohesively into a traditional construction contract.
Or how might that work? Can you see that as a sort of realistic expectation?
It's very difficult because at the moment, my understanding is the way modular contractors look at it is they're more manufacturing based. And traditional buildings, building contracts and JCTs, it's all about contracts. It's all about contracts. So there needs to be a knitting together of the two. We've tried to do that in part without, this is called a term alliance contract. So the council is contracted with a main contractor and with a employer's agent. And their role really is to develop one of 18 sites. This is one of them. And we've now completed 15 of them, I beg your pardon. We've completed 15, we've got 3 left. So we have achieved it, but it hasn't been as quick as the way it was sold to us. And it hasn't been, I think we've also, in terms of the budget, we've gone over budget as well.
So if you were doing it again, what would you do differently?
I think now, in today's landscape, it's a lot more different. And I think choosing a different modular supplier, having a stricter contract with that modular supplier would probably be the thing to do. All of our contracts aren't directly with the council, they're with the main contractor, who was a traditional build contractor, who then engaged the modular contractor. So I think it's making those contracts a bit more watertight.
Okay.
And I think it's bringing that, as I say, enabling that modular contractor to be able to do what they wanted to do easier, by not having so many things that impact on their manufacturing process.
Let's unpack that a little bit. What sort of things?
Well, for example, planning. So generally a modular MMC, it's numbers, volumetric. That's what it's all about. The more you build, the cheaper it is, the quicker we can get it done. If you have deviations, if you have changes, that makes the process go slower, that costs more money. If planning requires external facades to be different, to mesh in with the adjacents, that also changes things. If planning takes too long, that also changes things. So I think it's both sides, not just the MMC, the modular contractors, it's also the enablers, the employers, the councils, the private sector as well.
So, Peter, we talked a lot about the challenges. What does success look like for you?
Well, success really is once we've finally completed schemes. So this is part way through completion, but as I mentioned earlier, we've completed 15 schemes already, and that's a real positive for us. That's a lot of people off the list, the council waiting list. We've had to change our tack. We've started off on the MMC route, and we've done some traditional, we've done some MMC. Within the MMC bracket, we've also looked at something called SIPS panels. And SIPS panels really...
That's SIPS?
SIPS, structurally insulated panels. And they're slightly different to the modular scheme we see here. But they're enabling us to complete things where previously the modular contractors have unfortunately not been able to help us, and we've gone a different route. So we've tried not to put all of our eggs in one basket, put all of our risk in one place. We've tried to diversify just so we can get things done, we can get these houses built, and we can get people moved into them.
But the very act of trying these various systems of delivery is risky, isn't it? It's inherently risky, and you're going to fail in some ways. You said that you've gone over budget in delivering these. How can we find a place where we allow councils to take those sorts of risks? Because that's the only way to do things differently and get the homes built that we need.
I think we just need to be allowed leeway. I think we need to be allowed leeway both in terms of budget and in programme. And that's the only way it can happen, because we've seen predominantly since the COVID era that everything's in delay, everything's gone up, supply chain failures. So I think we need to be mindful of that, and I think the enablers and the budget controllers need to be mindful of that and need to allow a little bit of element of let's try something different, because when we try something different, we learn new things, we grow, we elevate. So, and I think that's what we're trying to do as a council, and I think that's what we're proving that can be done as a council.
And do you intend to do more MMC? Are you going to sort of stay on this path?
I think it's going to be, a mix of both. It's going to be a mix of traditional and MMC, and we're also doing some acquisitions and some partnerships as well. So I think we're diversifying our risk, and that's helping us achieve our goals.
And I guess I ought to ask, if it's so difficult and so expensive, and you keep having to sort of chop and change from one system to another, why do MMC at all? Is there really a benefit?
I think because we're at the initial phases of working out whether or not there's a benefit, I think it's good to try these things. I think that's the only way, as I mentioned, you can grow and you can learn whether one thing's good or not. Because if you sit there and just don't try it, then surely you won't ever know. So yes, there is a risk, but I think we're diversifying, as I mentioned, at that risk, and we're still achieving our goals.
So there must be a lot of stress involved in what you do, Peter, to make these things happen. You're trying new systems, and you're trying in circumstances that are difficult, but there's enormous need as well. So how does it feel to you to be delivering these homes?
That's the reason why you get into public sector housing. Seeing people who don't have a home move into their home. So you're seeing their faces. Often, when you come into the office, you see young families that have turned up that have basically got nowhere to live, and it's heartbreaking. So when you're working to develop something like this, it really gives you a nice sense of achievement, a nice sense of giving back to the community, and actually making things happen for Greenwich. So it's a real positive.
Well, good for you, Peter, and thank you very much for your role in getting those 1.5 million new homes built.
Thank you, Toby.
And that's it for another episode of 1.5 Million New Homes, the Local Government Challenge, sponsored by Redloft and Lovell Partnerships. We're going to be back in just a few days with more from Greenwich, so make sure you don't miss that by clicking like and subscribing, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.